My name is Dustin Vaughn, and I'm submitting my final project presentation for Education 655. The research question that my research was based on is, does the time of day in which a lesson is taught determine student success? There are a couple reasons that I chose this topic. The first reason is from my previous experiences. What I mean is, the last 7 years, I have taught all of my core classes in the morning. Mostly I've been a math teacher, and all of my math classes have been in the morning. And in the afternoon, we do things such as recess, social studies, science, but all of our core classes take place in the morning. Even my partner teacher, she taught her English language arts classes in the morning, and the afternoon was filled with the non-core subjects. And so this has led me to have some ideas in my own mind that the morning classes must be more conducive to student learning. I even came up with some of my own reasons, such as maybe they're fresh first thing in the morning, they're well rested, um, and in the afternoon, they may be more tired, bored, or so on. The next reason that I chose this topic is for future planning. When I started this research, I hoped that it would give me some valuable information that I would be able to use to help create a better schedule when I become an administrator myself. For this research, I just used my 3rd and 4th grade math classes at H.E. White Elementary School. I'm the math teacher for 3rd and 4th grade, and so it was easy for me to use those two classes to have a much broader data source. My 3rd grade class had 19 students, 8 boys and 11 girls, with 3 of those students being in special education. My 4th grade class had 14 students. There were 7 boys and 7 girls, and there was one student that was in special education. This study took place from May 28th through June 7th, so it was at the end of the year. It was after all of our summative assessments had taken place, and I had the flexibility of using both of those classes at various times throughout the day. For my data collection, I taught 4 different lessons per grade, and I taught those at various times throughout the day. 8:05, 11 o'clock, 12:05, and 2:05. And I taught those lessons during different days so that each class only got 1 lesson per day. And as I said earlier, that spanned over a 2-week period. In order to keep these lessons as standardized as possible and to take any of my error out, I used Engage New York. And Engage New York is a very scripted and well thought out curriculum, and it's free, it's online, but I used these lessons so that all of my lessons would be very similar in rigor and delivery. And I stuck to the script in order to have this study be as accurate as possible. What I was checking for was student behavior, student engagement, and student performance, and I used both summative and formative assessment to gauge these 3 criteria. For student behavior, I was looking for things that would warrant me stepping in and disciplining that student, and I didn't have a whole lot of issues there. My student engagement, I was looking for redirections. Did I have to get on to a student for not paying attention, for maybe turning around and talking, that sort of thing? And for student performance, at the end of each lesson, I assigned the students a 10-question quiz. And these questions came from Engage New York, so that, again, they were similar in delivery and rigor. And that just helped me to make sure that everything was as standardized as possible for this study. after I taught all of my lessons, I took the data and I compiled it into this graph. And if you'll look at the graph, the red bars represent third grade, the orange bars represent fourth grade. And I have it broken down into the 4 different time periods. And as you can see, there's not a huge difference with behavior incidents between 805 and 205. Third grade only had one issue, and it was during 805. They had none at 11 or 1235 or 205. For fourth grade, 805, 11 o'clock, and 205, they had the same amount. They had 2 behavior issues. They only had one at 1235. From this data, I've concluded that there just isn't any information showing me that there's a correlation between the time that the lesson took place and student behavior. The next set of data that I analyzed was student performance. At the end of each lesson, I gave students a 10-question quiz that came directly from the information that we just went over that class period. And I got the questions from Engage New York so that they would be similar in rigor as well as the format, just to keep everything standardized. And after analyzing these results, I found that there's really not much of a difference among any of the time periods. If you look at the graph for third grade, the lowest time period was 11 o'clock with an average of 6.1 problems correct out of 10, while the highest was at 205 at 7.2 questions out of 10 as an average. For fourth grade, it was even less of a span. We had 6.9 as the lowest, and it went up to 7.8 at the highest. So that's less than 1 problem for fourth grade discrepancy, and right around 1 problem for third grade. One thing that you can note is 11 o'clock, that time period was the lowest for both class periods, or both classes. However, that's not much of a difference between the lowest and the highest. So I would conclude that student performance is not impacted by the time that the lesson takes place. The third area that I looked at in my data was student engagement. And as I said earlier, this was the number of redirections that I had to give. This was for things such as students getting out of their seat, not paying attention, turning around talking, that sort of thing. Anything that would disrupt the class, and I'd have to redirect the students. Now, this was the only one of the 3 criteria that showed a little bit of discrepancy. If you look at the graph, the first 3 time periods, 805, 11, and 1235, they're pretty similar. They go from 1 incident up to 2 incidents. So there's not much of a difference there, just one redirection. However, when we move over to the 205 class period, for third grade it doubles. It goes up to 4. And for fourth grade it goes up to 3. So that just really stands out that 205 class period seemed to have more disruptions than any of the others. One thing that I would point out here is the 205 class period came directly after recess, and the majority of those redirections came at the very beginning when we had just came back from getting a drink and using the restroom. So I don't know if that played anything into the results or not, but that is worth noting. It also does seem that there is a gradual uptrend throughout the day. As the day progresses, it did seem that there were a few more redirections, not enough in the morning and 1235 classes to make a significant difference. But as I said, that 205 class period is something that does stick out. The conclusions that I have came up with from this research is that there is no clear evidence that the time of day has an impact on student performance. Teachers and administrators should take all factors into consideration for scheduling because student performance doesn't vary through the day. So what is my plan of action moving forward after this research? I will consider conducting further research to look into the amount of redirections. As we saw earlier, student engagement was the only of the three criteria that had any type of discrepancy. So I think that if I isolate that criteria and investigate it further, that I may be able to substantiate that there is a difference or see that there is no difference. But I think that this would be a very viable research topic for moving forward. Thank you for watching my PowerPoint presentation.